Hey, this is Rob Anspach. Welcome to another edition of E-Heroes. Today's E-Hero is Craig Speck, and he is one of I think, America's #1 ground transportation experts around. Now, you're probably wondering, why do I have him on the show? What's this ground transportation all about? Well, you're going to find out. And Craig, thank you for being here, and you're going to just entertain, the listeners with what you do, and hopefully, give them an idea of what you're all about and how you help people.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, Rob. On your podcast. I've looked forward for a long time for this opportunity. Basically, the purpose of my books, and I have 3 of them, it's called the How to Learn Not to Crash and Burn series of books. And it's basically, the books are dedicated to helping the group travel decision maker travel safer exponentially, help them avoid all the scams, crashes, and lawsuits out there. That and basically to help them gain absolute confidence in the most dangerous activity they'll ever engage in, which is arranging, hiring, and negotiating ground transportation for their traveling group, and then getting in those vehicles, Rob, and driving down the road. And all it takes is one mistake for a trip that's scheduled to go north to literally go south in the opposite direction. A client can lose money for their organization, get involved in some kind of a scam where they've got an unscrupulous motor coach or van rental carrier that's trying to do business with them, or just at worst get their people killed or hurt in a crash because they don't know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And with my 31 years of experience, I like Harvey McKay says, I teach them how to swim with the sharks. Or actually, I'll go through and just clear the path of the sharks.
I think the last time I was on a bus, we were going out to Washington, D.C., and this was a group that we were all going out, and the driver was so jerky and kept slamming on the brakes and going and starting, and kids were throwing up because of the motion, and after about 2 hours, everybody was getting sick. And I was hoping that they wouldn't have the same driver going on the way back, because it was awful.
One of the big challenges that you look at on a charter like that, Rob, or some kind of a tour, is whenever you hire a charter bus company, the federal privacy laws prohibit you from having any personal information on the driver. It's the same with limo companies. Any company provides a vehicle with a driver has privacy laws that protect the driver but don't protect the end user. So what happens is you're at their mercy, and you have to count on them to have a screening process that will screen that driver appropriately. Now, there are some things that I cover in this latest book that you can do when the driver arrives at your facility. Look them over, make sure they're clean, make sure they don't smell like alcohol, or they're woozy from some kind of drugs, prescription drugs that they're on. You can make sure they're clean, neat uniform, and you can look at their commercial driver's license, and they have to have a medical card. But federal privacy laws prohibit you from copying any of that information or even taking a snapshot of it. So when you hire one of these companies with a driver, you've got to be so careful. And inside this latest book, I've got a screening process. It's kind of a funny, long name, Rob, but it's called my Spectacular Coach Supplier Selection Process. I named it because it's got 10.5 very strict criteria that a travel group decision maker or a family needs to use before they hire a coach or a limousine or any vehicle with a driver.
Yeah, but what do you do when you're in a hurry and your group is going somewhere that's it's paid for, and if you have to replace that driver, you're going to be late, you're going to be delayed, you might miss a flight, you might miss an event.
Well, the frustrating part of that is, one of the things I teach in the book is if you get a driver that shows up and something's wrong with them, don't get into an argument with the driver, because they don't really have any power to do anything to, you've always talked about when you deal with any organization, go to the top. Mm-hmm. I mean, what I did as a broker consultant is I would call, I had relationships with the executives of the company. I could call them and get another driver sent over immediately. So that resolved that problem. Getting into an argument with the driver for any reason is just, they're powerless to do anything. to make a decision from the top to get
So
your results.
how did you get started in this industry?
It's interesting. Right out of school, I'm a 88 graduate, marketing degree, Dallas Baptist University. And I was getting in the clothing retail business, and I answered an ad with Enterprise Rent-A-Car to be a rental manager trainee for them. Funny thing is, Rob, I lasted on that job about 3 months, and they told me that I was too aggressive for their organization and that I needed a sales job instead of developing my ability. They threw me out the door, and I spent the next 12 years working for car and van rental companies in sales and management and marketing. But the funny thing is, when I became a broker in 2001, guess who one of the first companies that wanted to join my network of suppliers was? Enterprise. And I became their largest independent van rental rep in the United States, doing even more than their people that are in the highest echelons of sales. So it was a lot of fun. So they went to work for me instead of me working for them.
I see, that's the way to do it.
Absolutely. But I've had a total of 31 years in the industry, and makers and families how to avoid those problems that are associated with or without a driver, depending on what you want. I can not only get it for them, but I can help them stay safe. So.
Wow. Tell me about this book, this ultimate common sense ground transportation guide for travel groups. I mean, this is the second one. So the first one came out when?
First one I published in the summer of 2014. And the one thing that I learned, Rob, and I know you're the author of many more books than I have, is that if I can publish a book, anyone can publish a book. I started blogging in 2010 and came out with that first book. The first book is called The Ultimate Common Sense Group Transportation Guide for Churches and Schools, How to Learn Not to Crash and Burn, number 1. And I wrote that mainly for youth pastors. The problem is that youth pastors, they come out of seminary and they teach them everything they need to know about being a youth pastor, except about the most dangerous activity they'll ever engage in. And so many of them get disciplined or terminated or thrown out the door because they make a stupid mistake, or even when they go out and they treat the driver horrible or they lose their temper on a charter. There's just so many things I cover in both books to help them keep their job, help them look good to their bosses, and most of all, just keep them out of those horrible charter bus crashes that you hear about once a month in the news or more.
Have you ever had any of those situations?
In all of the years that I have been doing this, I've had no crashes, no fatal or injury crashes. In fact, as part of my screening process in this newest book, Rob, one of the things that I would not allow a charter bus company to do was have fatal crashes to join my network. And when people would go with companies that I knew had the fatal crashes, I would ask them, how can you take your people onto a vehicle with a company that's killed people in their coaches? And I have such a passion about this, just like you have a passion about throwing scammers and morons out of your business clients' lives. I have a passion for keeping my clients alive and safe so that they have fun on the trip. The whole experience has got to be fun. It's got to be enjoyable. It's got to be memorable, not boring. But at the same time, they want to know that they're safe, but they don't want to be thinking about that. That's why they hired me, is because they wanted to feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
And so that's my passion is keeping them out of those problems by heading it off in advance, moving the sharks out of the way so they can swim right off.
I was at an event in San Francisco a few months ago, and they had hired one of the smaller buses that carry about 30 people, and anyway, really nice seats. I mean, overhead cameras and TVs and whatnot, and halfway through the trip, the driver started handing out waters if we wanted, and just made it very pleasant. But you don't get that a lot with some companies. They just they shove you in, and they hope that you feel comfortable. And if you have if you want a water, too bad.
I mean, absolutely. The driver makes or breaks the trip. One of the articles that's in my latest book is 6 valid reasons why you should give your driver gratuity. And of course, the coach drivers and limo drivers love to have my book because they of course they agree with that too. But and I also teach the end user how to treat the driver, how like never to put them in a hotel room they wouldn't put their family in. Mm-hmm. You know, don't put your driver in a rat's nest because they're not. If it's the longer the trip, the more sleep they have to have. You know, they're required to have 8 to 9 hours of sleep, and then they can drive 10 hours for 600 miles, whichever comes first. But if you put them in a rat's nest, they're not going to get any sleep. You know, don't put them in a hotel that's next to a club that's got loud music with a barbed wire fence around it. I mean, a lot of these things just have to be thought through in advance by an expert.
You mentioned gratuity. What is the going rate for a passenger to give gratuity to a driver?
Gratuity, the formula that I use, and actually was given to me by a longtime friend in the coach business because I was trying to, set that benchmark, and it's $1 to $2 per person in each direction, and then depending on driver performance and attitude. You mentioned the bottle of water, and there's just so many things that the driver can do. They have control of the process until they screw up so bad that the client doesn't want to deal with it. That's the challenge. If the driver is trained well and takes the initiative, they make or break the trip. And if the client, I've seen cases outside of my charters, Rob, where the people on the bus are so mean to the driver stops somewhere, parks the bus, catches a cab, and goes home. And all those people have to pay to get home. That's an extreme case of treating a driver badly. But it does in both directions.
On your book, on your cover, you have various different buses. Which one is I think the best?
Well, if you it depends on what you want. If you've got and I talk about this in both of my books, the motor coach. Typically the motor coach starts at about 40 and goes up 36 and goes up to about 57. Those are ideal for the longer trips. They've got the right suspension and chassis for the long ride. They have the executive high back forward facing seats that recline. They have the restroom on board, and they have the luggage bays underneath. So those are ideal for the longer trips. Now you had mentioned the shorter, the 30 passenger type minibus. Those are usually ideal, Rob, for trips that are less than 150 miles from the carrier's home base. And they typically don't have restrooms on them. They've got your luggage door in the back. They have some of the comforts, but they don't have that chassis and the suspension so that you're not, as you mentioned, bouncing up and down on that ride. So, the motor coach, that's the best for the long trips. The mini coach, which is probably from 18 up to, can be 15 up to about 35 passenger size for the crew. Those are best for the regional type trips, 150 miles or less. But I wouldn't try to take one of those over the road because there's not enough room. Somebody asked me the other day, how much room is in the back of it, is underneath that motor coach? And I said, well, how many ladies are going and how many bags of shoes? And they all just burst out laughing because they know that when they're taking a lot of girls and women, it's just there's a lot of stuff that's going to be going. They got to limit them to so many bags per person. So it just varies on the luggage requirements and where you're going, and all the vehicles. Each vehicle has its own purpose. If you want to drive yourself, renting 15 passenger vans or renting minibuses from my company, Masters, is ideal. Just depending on whether it's a larger group or smaller group. I can pretty much accommodate anybody.
Now you're out of Dallas, but your network is everywhere. How does you make it all work?
Well, I had my own business for 16 years, Speck Transportation, and Masters 2 years, and 2 months ago hired me away to work for them. But we, and this the company that I'm with now, Masters, just specializes in rental of minibuses, 15 to 35 passengers that you rent and drive yourself. You provide your own drivers. We're in 9 to 10 states. We rent from 1 day to 1 year. And then we also sell and lease everything, Rob, from small minivans with a wheelchair lift up to the big 55 passenger motor coaches. So if there's a school or church or organization that needs to purchase something, replace fleet, add to their fleet, or they need to lease something long-term, longer than a year, I can help with that. And I've got charter bus companies all over the nation that I do referrals with as well. And I'm a nationwide broker for Enterprise on the 15-passenger van. So everything's covered.
Now, you had mentioned, if you have your own driver, how does that work?
Well, if you have your own driver, typically you're going to be working with either from small cars to 15-passenger vans, or you're going to be working with, like my minibuses, 15 to 35 passengers. If you're, typically if you're renting a small car to a big 15-passenger van, you don't need a whole lot. You don't need a commercial driver's license to drive a 15-passenger van. And in some states, the rules and laws are a little bit different. Like California, it's any more than 10 is a commercial driver's license. In Texas, it's 15, and more than 15 requires a commercial driver's license. So for the 15 on down to the small car, all you need is your license, proof of insurance, and credit card. Now, renting minibuses from us, we have to get a certificate of insurance. If it's larger than 15 passengers, we need a certificate of insurance with certain information on it. The client has to have a CDL license and a commercial policy. If they're renting a 15-passenger minibus or 15-passenger Sprinter, a personal license is fine. But
how does that work when, like, say you rent in Pennsylvania, where I'm at, or Texas, where you're at, where you don't need a special license for 15-passenger, but then you travel to California and they do? Are you still legal?
In fact, what I found out a few months ago when I was setting up some rentals in California is what the other states do is, because the client is only there for a short time, they'll go ahead and honor that license from another state. Now if you're moving there, obviously you've got to, follow the rules or follow the laws that are in that state. That's something I'm probably going to put in the next book too. I'm glad you brought that up.
So what's the next book going to cover that these didn't already cover?
Next book is going to be called The Ultimate Common Sense Ground Transportation Risk Management Bible, How to Learn Not to Crash and Burn, number 3. I'm looking for a commercial insurance agent that's been in the industry, 20 to 30 years that I can write that with. And we're going to talk about all of the different, insurance. Like I've got a section in the first book that's, 6 types of insurance. I can't remember the exact name of the title. I looked at that particular article a while ago. There's 6 types of insurance to consider before renting vans. And what happens? One of the big scams, Rob, is when you go to the airport and you rent any type of vehicle, and they have you go through the spill, and they there's 2 things that they do to you. One, they're trained to sell you the whole package of insurance. So if you haven't talked to your insurance agent in advance, you're going to end up in the cost of your rental. And the longer it is, the more true that is. So you need to talk to your insurance agent, either your commercial or personal insurance agent. Since you're investing big bucks to hire that expert, you need to call them and get their advice so that you don't overpay at the counter. The other thing is that when they send you out to the car or the van at the airport, most people just get in it and drive away. That's a really big mistake, because you've got to have them, and you've got to get that rental agent to come out and inspect that vehicle with you. You need to lift up the wipers, especially on the big vans. You need to lift up the wipers, because a lot of stars, chips, and cracks hide under the windshield, and they get you. And they're trained to not be aggressive on the outgoing, but when you come in, all these things are showing up at the end that weren't there before. So you got to make sure, you got to open the trunk, make sure the spare tire and jack are there. You got to take a look at the tires. Hey, are these things really worn? Do I see nails or screws? You want to make sure that things work in the car. You want to make sure the vehicle is clean enough for you before you leave, because if you open the ashtray and it's full of cigarettes, then they're going to get you for smoking in the vehicle, because when they checked in the previous time, or there's damage on the vehicle, like the roof of the 15-passenger van, if you don't check it, you'll get charged for somebody else's damage. And how stupid is that? Yeah. So there's a checklist of things that you can look at. So that you can
or as soon as you get it from the airport, they don't put any toll booth vignettes on the window.
Right.
And so you go through a toll booth, because that's there's nowhere
you can't escape it. And they
Absolutely.
take your photograph, and next thing you know, you got $100 ticket.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest flaws of working with any rental company is that they don't have the toll tags in the vehicles. I know on the back end, even with Masters, we've had a few that have come in. Fortunately, I just called the client and said, hey, there was this much worth of tolls. Put it on the credit card. They say that's fine. Send me the invoice. But, when you just send them an invoice and you don't tell them what it is, it feels like a scam on the back end. So
Well,
I have a real appreciation for my clients on that subject with the tolls.
the problem also arises that the rental companies want to take a piece of the action. So if your toll was $20, well, they have the rental company has a $25 processing fee on top of that. So now you just paid double what the toll is.
Absolutely. It's not a good thing any way you look at it. The best thing to do for especially like even with our minibuses is to have the toll tags in them so that when we're billed for the tolls, we can charge the client exactly what is charged to us. One of the problems is that on the back end, the toll company can wait up to 90 days before they can get the charges to you. And you want to present to the client everything up front, all inclusive. That's the way that I've always worked. And when you get these things in 90 days or 6 months later, I'm like, come on, but you are dealing with government bureaucrats. So it is sort of scammy, and it's not the way you want to present yourself.
Yeah, I was down in Florida, and now this was me driving through a toll booth, and it took them 9 months to finally get me a ticket.
I mean, it really is outrageous. I don't know if you've got any of that in one of your scam books, Rob, but that would be a great.
Yeah, Rob versus the government.
That's right. That'd be a great book for you.
So you have a lot of networks, a lot of connections. Do you have a story that you can share that of a cool client that you had a service?
Well, it's interesting because I have a long letter that a client wrote me when I had my own business. It was on a Sunday, and he had gone to I reserved him a last minute 15 passenger van with Enterprise at one of the airports, and he showed up, and he had a debit card. Well, at the airport locations, the rules are a little bit different from your standard suburban rental locations. Most of them won't take a debit card. And so he called me and said, Craig, I've got everything, but I've got a debit card and they won't take it. So, the beautiful thing is I know the executives and the higher ranking managers. So I call the area manager. He calls and gets it okay. And the guys, they move him right through the line because he's a spec client. Mm-hmm. And that was really exciting because he wrote me a one-page testimonial, unsolicited, which is great. I've had just situations where I had a number of years ago in Conway, Arkansas. I had a client who had 3 vans reserved, and the manager didn't have them available and just went home and left the client stranded there. About 6 hours later, with negotiations with the vice president, Enterprise wrote a check for half of the charter bus. It cost $7,000 just to keep from making me mad.
Wow.
So, I was a man of results in my own company, and I'm a man of results now. And I'm sharing another story with you. At a situation here at my new company that a client had a wreck in a bus, and the bus just sat in the shop for a long time. And although the client didn't have a problem paying the repair fees, I got the business administrator on the phone. I said, let's pray about this situation before we begin, because God has all the wisdom. He's wiser than me and you and I put together. We're both smart guys. And I said, let's pray about it. And when we prayed about it, it was all worked out. I was so grateful, having God first in my business, Rob, that he came in and he let it all work out. And then later on, my boss, who was dealing with this situation too and wasn't very nice about it, he's not here anymore. So in this case, the client called me back and said, Craig, you should have been in his position. I said, well, I did own a company for 16 years. So yeah, that vice president position is attainable for me. But you got to treat everybody like you love them. And then sometimes, as you mentioned, there are some clients that come to the door that are not a good fit, and you have to say bye bye quickly because all relationships are more costly to exit than to enter.
Yeah. So how do people get a hold of you?
They can reach me several ways. My cell phone, which is basically my office phone as well, is 817-437-8702. I can be reached by email at cspeck, that's CSPECK, at masterstransportation.com. And be sure and put an S on the end of Masters or to bounce like a rubber ball. So cspeck at masterstransportation.com. And those are my main two ways. Our website is masterstransportation.com. We have a huge inventory. We sell just about every kind of and lease and even rent almost every kind of bus you can imagine. Mobility
So
units.
you sell them too?
Sell them, lease them, rent them, and finance them. We just opened up our own financing, and we just bought Capital Coachworks out in Washington, D.C., another bus company. So now we have a presence in Washington, D.C., which is really cool. Rob, I don't know if you've ever heard me do my company jingle, which is about 60 seconds. It's a lot of fun. I think your folks would enjoy it. I'm Craig Speck with Masters Transportation. We provide the wheels to help you travel the nation. Whether you need a motor coach, mini coach, or van, just pick up the phone. I'm your rental man. When you need a van or coach to supplement your fleet, I got access to more than anybody on the street. You provide the drivers that volume buying rate. I give you the kind of service you can appreciate. There's no real competition when you need to rent. Just give me a call. Engine time's well spent. From small vans to big coaches, I've got them all. Just look to me. I'm your one-stop call. Whenever you need me, you'll always find me there. Your group safety's riding no more than a prayer. So when your group needs to go on a traveling spree, call 817-477-3003. Woo! And that's another way you can reach me too, 817-477-3003, my old company number that transfers over to my 8702 line.
That was awesome. How long did it take you to develop that rap?
It's interesting too, is because back when I first started, I'd only been in the business about 4 years, and I was going to these business networking groups. And I know you've done this probably in your early years, Rob, where you hear somebody. They stand up 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm Joe with Joe's Plumbing, and we fix your drain. Wow, I'm going to get excited about that and do business with you. So I came up with a rap that would always be very hard to follow and would always be an attention grabber. Now, it's on YouTube with my previous business. Someone can look up my ridiculous business marketing rap, and they can see that it's got music, dum 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 dum, and it's got me dancing around. It's a little bit longer. It's about 1 minute 21 seconds, and shows my first book at the end, the old cover of the first book. So it's just a lot of fun. It's an attention grabber, and nobody wants to follow you. My friends will try to sit on the correct side of me, because can you imagine being in a networking meeting, Rob, and having to follow up with something like that? It ain't happening, baby. It ain't happening. They can't do it. They can't rap. It's always so late.
I'd be going, nope, I don't want to follow you. No, pass. Next.
Oh, it's so comical. I wish I could video some of the things that are said after I do my rap, because I always get a standing ovation or a clap. I can't rap.
Yeah,
love it.
I stopped those networking events long ago. I just
understand, because a lot of it is people who kind of come in and they just suck the life out of the group, because they're MLM junkies. They're jumping from one to the other, and they're coming in. And when I go into those groups, I'm a giver.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be a giver and encourager.
I think out of the 40 people that were involved in the one group I was in, only about 3 of them were givers, and the rest of them were suckers. And
takers lose and givers gain.
I just couldn't take it anymore. And it was like, well, Rob, you have to be here every week. And I'm like, I got a business to run. I don't have to come in here. And
especially the earlier it is, it's really, you need something And what happens that even the local chapter of the GKIC business meetings, I don't know if you know Mike Crow, who's worked with Dan Kennedy. Mike wrote the foreword to my first two books. And he used to have me open the meeting with my rap to wake people up. And this is 7 o'clock in the evening. People are supposed to be awake. They're tired from their job. Yeah, just do the rap and wake them up for me. So that was really exciting. Kind of be his MC. And now introducing the great, the magnificent Mike Crow.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I met Mike I've met him a couple of times. The last time I was in Denver, and he's a interesting guy, and yeah,
he's great. Yeah, he's really built his business well. And he taught me a lot of things and left me a wonderful testimonial. He's been a client both with Masters and my previous company. He's been a major influence in my life. He really has.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it. I mean, you got some great books, and I'm anxious to actually dive into this one. I just got it today, and you got some.
Read the message on the inside. Yeah. I do always include a personally written message on both the inside cover and the next page. So
yeah, it's great, and a lot of great tips in here, and so listeners, if you need ground transportation, if you want to learn more about this industry and emulate Craig, visit him on Facebook, visit him on LinkedIn, visit his website, learn more about him, get his books they're on Amazon?
Amazon, yes, sir. I've got them presently in the paperback, in the Kindle, and I have them in a PDF format. And you can buy them, but I give all the books away at no charge to establish myself as an expert and authority in the industry.
Yeah. So there you go, folks. And I'll see you guys you can hear me on the next podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see it. So adios.